Total Screen proudly presents their official podcast, On Screen, with your hosts, Tyson Gifford and William Roerig. Hello, everybody, and welcome to On Screen, the official podcast of the Total Screen. My name is Tyson.
My name is Will.
And today, as always, we're going to be discussing She-Hulk and House of the Dragon. We're going to be discussing the season or series finale of She-Hulk, we don't know. And we're going to be discussing the penultimate episode of season 1 of House of the Dragon. In addition to that, we have some stuff coming up on the horizon that we're going to bring up. And we also have our news segment this week, although we're only covering one story. And it was a big story having to do with Bayonetta and the voice actress who formerly played her, Helena Taylor. We're going to kind of go over all the controversy from that, and so we decided to just kind of eschew all the other news stories. There was nothing huge. I guess the one big news story we had to cut, I'll mention right now just to get out of the way, is that Harrison Ford has been cast as Thunderbolt Ross. There you go. Yeah. That's the one big story. Yeah. We brought it up. We're not going to discuss it.
That's the thing they did. That's about my opinion on that.
But we got bigger stories, so let's move on to our On Beat segments. On Beat. This week on Beat, as I said, we're going to be discussing the Bayonetta VA issue. Let me get the facts out of the way, and then we can start talking about the implications and stuff.
Facts.
Okay, so the facts is that Helena Taylor, who voiced Bayonetta in the first two games, came out and said that she was offered only $4,000 for her entire work for Bayonetta 3 and had turned it down, and she came out and was advocating for fans to boycott the game.
Yeah, she had a video on it on Twitter over the weekend.
Like a series of videos.
There was like 3 of them.
A bunch of tweets and stuff too. It was like
adding context, and I'm like,
yeah. She had also kind of thrown Jennifer Hale under the bus, who's the voice actress who is replacing her. And then she was also attacking Hideki Kamiya, who a lot of the fans were going after on Twitter as well, and who responded in typical Hideki Kamiya way. We'll get to that later. Just recently, Jason Schreier from Bloomberg, formerly of Kotaku, put out a story basically refuting her claims and saying that she was offered anywhere between $15,000 and $20,000 for her entire work, and that she was asking for 6 figures plus residuals for the game, and that's what was turned down, saying that she basically had lied about it. He had some evidence as well that he was posting. We should also note that even if it was the $4,000 that she claimed, that goes along with SAG-AFTRA rates, which is the union for actors and voice actors. It's important to get that out of the way because you can argue morality, but you can't argue legality. Even if she is completely right in what she said, it's still legal. It's just a matter of if it's moral or not. That's where the discussion is. It has nothing to do with legality. The only legal issues that could potentially be brought up is the fact that she broke an NDA, which makes her liable to lawsuit as well. Yeah. Now let's kind of get into our kind of thoughts on it. And I thought a good way to start here would be to kind of start kind of at a baseline and build up, and kind of that gives us an idea of like where we might agree and where we might start to differ by going down to the baseline, which is to start by saying, I think we're both in agreement that there is a problem in the video game industry, not just with voice actors, but with other laborers where they're not paid what they're worth.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so that's like a baseline that we're going to get that out of the way right there. Okay. So that's, we agree on that. That's out of the way. Now let's kind of like go up another level from that. Is it screwing the actress over if they offer her, let's say they lowballed her, for whatever reason, whether it's just because they thought they could get away with it or because they didn't want her? Is that morally wrong in the case of in this situation, if that was what happened?
Well, yeah, it is morally wrong. It's morally wrong to pay people, especially people like Helena Taylor, who put a lot of time and effort into honing her craft, such a pitiful, salary for for a game like Bayonetta 3. Like, come on,
Yeah.
like that's unacceptable.
Well, we can say that is union right.
But I mean,
it's also for the first game, she said that she did 4 sessions that were 4 hours each for the first game. She hasn't revealed like how much it would have been for the third game. We don't know how much it would have been for the third game because she didn't do it. But 4 sessions, 4 hours each is 16 hours for, $4,000, say. That's quite a bit of money. I kind of like dispute a little bit. I feel bad for voice actors that have to worry about, how much money they're going to make on a project, but that's kind of what acting is at the low level before you're like a name actor, like a major screen actor or something. Everybody else, whether they're a screen actor or a voice actor, is basically taking tons of roles, taking everything they can get their hands on because it's a gig economy and it doesn't pay well. And it's not right that it doesn't pay well, but that's the competitive nature of the industry and what the rates are set at by the unions. But it would have been like $250 or more. I can't do the math right now. I had it before, but lost it. Per hour is what her pay would have been for this work. I know some people were comparing it to saying like, oh, look at what a screen actor does. And I think that's kind of a laughable comparison because screen actors put in a lot more work just by the very nature of the fact that they have multiple parts of their performance that are not done by a voice actor, in the sense that they have to physically appear on screen. They have to be made up. They have to be costumed. All that takes time. And the idea that like, say, a movie would finish filming in 4 days, 4-hour days, is like laughable. Like the actors are on set basically in costume on call, like 16 hours a day basically.
Right.
For like months. So even when they're not working, they have to be on call and on there. Voice actors, if they have their own studio, they can literally phone in their performances. And I don't mean that in like they don't try. I mean literally, they're connecting through a phone line and sending in their performances that way.
It's still a crap though. Like
I get that. I'm just saying like to compare it to screen actors and make it look like it's an equal thing. It's like, no, it's not. Like there's a huge difference in workload for like a screen actor versus a voice actor. So like that, I feel like that point has been brought up and I think it needs to be refuted, in my opinion. It's also a thing of like, Brad Pitt does a movie, he's gonna have to go around and do press junkets for months, where he's doing like 10 shows or interviews like a day or more. Yeah, he's gonna like travel around the world, but he's not gonna be able to enjoy anywhere he's going because it's just interview, next stop, interview. And they have to do promotion stuff. When was the last time you saw a voice actor doing like heavy promotion like that? I think you actually see more heavy promotion from the game designers. Like you're going to see more interviews coming out of Hideki Kamiya about Bayonetta, and he's not even the director on this one, than you're going to see from like Jennifer Hale. So I think that's disputable too. I also personally, I take issue with Helena Taylor trying to claim the character. Because first off, the character was written before she was cast. Second off, the character was designed. There's artists that worked on it. The performance capture, everything like that has nothing to do with her.
Listening to her video, I think she's talking about her performance, her voice performance, and Jennifer Hale trying to replicate or mimic that. And saying like, oh, she can't be Bayonetta. She can't do it.
Yeah, I get that perspective, but there's also a lot of people that are parodying what she said as it is like she's that character.
Right.
Like with completely disacknowledging the much heavier workloads of the animators and motion capture artists and stuff that were involved in creating her personality beyond just her voice, And if you've played Bayonetta, you know that whoever's doing the motion capture or the animation for her character is doing a ton for what her character is, like her personality is in the motion performance, and she does not do that. So I feel like that needs to be said as well. Like regardless of where you stand on Helena Taylor, I think it needs to be understood that a lot of people brought that character to life, not just her.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's fair.
So what do you feel about this second report, the Jason Schreier report?
I believe it. I have no reason to disbelieve it. First of all, Helena Taylor's claim of like only making 4K for the entire game, for the entire performance, sounded suspicious to me from the jump because that is exceedingly low for something like that. And that would suggest like there's something weird going on behind the scenes. Like either they purposefully lowballed her because they didn't want her to come back. The reason that doesn't make sense that they would offer her 4K for her whole performance if they want her is they hired Jennifer Hale.
Who's a much more notable voice actor.
Yeah, who's going to be commanding way more than 4,000. Like,
yeah.
They didn't like go with like, somebody who would like accept the 4,000.
Yeah, they didn't go for Jennifer Kale, the neighbor from down the street that you saw once at a grocery store.
Right. So on the face of it, like, that's strange. So you're thinking, okay, if the 4,000 figure is true, then either they purposefully lowballed her to get her to decline because they didn't want her back, or they got a new protagonist in this game, so maybe they're doing a thing where, like, maybe it's an Metal Gear Solid 2 deal where this new protagonist is the major protagonist that you're playing as for the bulk of the game, and Bayonetta only makes occasional appearances, which didn't seem to be the case from the trailers, but trailers can often be deceptive or misleading. And I thought, like,
I definitely think her role's reduced like, because they're making like, a lot of playable characters that are
Yeah, I was like thinking, if the role is significantly reduced, then that would also make sense. I mean, it seemed like really off to me. And then, like, when Bloomberg came out, so Jason Schreier, and the thing is, like, he says he's talked to people there, and it would be like a he said, she said situation, but Jason Schreier has said he's seen documents stating, like, the pay that was offered to Helena Taylor. And
Helena's still fighting that, by the way. That needs to be pointed out, that she's still,
yes, she made
after this report's come out, she has said that is bullshit.
Yeah, she made the statement to Bloomberg, because Bloomberg reached out to her in the course of their reporting, and she said to her that what they're claiming is not true and that her version of the story is true. But I mean, Jason saw documents. There's receipts, you know? And Jason Schreier is not the type of person who's going to just watch Helena Taylor on Twitter and go, okay, I'm going to discredit the hell out of this woman. Yeah,
he's not exactly an advocate for big gamer.
You're right, yeah. He's not going to, like, write up some bullshit for Bloomberg, just discredit. I'm pretty sure he looked into this, like, fully expecting to confirm her claims and get a big story about, like, the shockingly low pay standards of
which would
Nintendo
be consistent
Platinum.
with his previous reporting on other issues.
But he found out the opposite, and that's what he reported. So I'm inclined to trust this.
Yeah, definitely. I think the way I see it is that we don't know. We just don't know. Like you can trust in one direction or you could lean towards one way or another, but we can't just say like, oh, he saw some paperwork, he reported it. Absolutely, she's 100% wrong. Period. It's done. It's over. No, we just don't know. We probably never will.
There's one thing in the reporting that like she was offered 4K for like about five or so sessions, 4K per session, and she turned that down. She asked for 6 figures plus residuals, which they declined, but they still want her to be involved, so they did offer her a cameo part in the game for a flat 4K fee.
Yeah, some of the trailers for the game show it appears like it might be some kind of like a multiverse Bayonetta thing, so that might have been what it was.
Right. So like after she rejected the initial offer, they offered her like a flat 4K for a cameo role. And it could be that's what she's referring to in her video, but again, that's like very misleading because what she's saying like lacks a lot of context in there.
Yeah, it's also it works against her, just the fact of the timing of her coming out against this game. Like, she broke an NDA, so it's not like she was waiting on the NDA to make a comment before, or couldn't make a comment because of it, because she broke the NDA already. But she didn't come out before when the game was earlier in production. She comes out like weeks before, which comes across as very vindictive.
Yeah.
And that makes it a little bit questionable. Let's talk about Hideki Kamiya, because he was kind of thrown under the bus by all of this. Now, you and I think a lot of people that know who Hideki Kamiya is on Twitter particularly know that he has a very set kind of personality and style on Twitter. He's known for blocking people. He has like a list of rules. Basically, if you violate it, you're blocked. He does it almost with a sense of humor, you know? It's like part of his character, you know, of his heightened character of himself. He came out with a pretty bad English thing saying saying, pretty badly worded, saying basically, there's an air of lies to this. This is untruth. He said, I can't say anything else. And then he said, also remember, beware my rules.
Like, yeah. Like,
which people got particularly upset about when he said that.
He's put beware my rules in like a lot of tweets in the past. Like that was like a normal thing for him to say at this point.
Yeah. I mean, anytime he makes a comment that he knows is going to get a lot of feedback or response, he'll put beware my rules. Because he knows that people are going to break his rules, and rather than them going, why did he block me? He's like saying it up front. This is part of his personality. What do you think about that, though? What did you think about his response? Like, a lot of people were upset about it. You know his personality a little bit more to understand that, like, why he did it that way. But how do you still feel about it in general?
I think it's pretty easy. So this was the tweet he tweeted. He said, sad and deplorable about the attitude of untruth. That's all I can tell now. By the way, beware my rules. And so this makes sense because he was directly called out by Helena Taylor in her video as somebody who was directly involved in paying her poorly or whatever. So I think, like he felt like he had to make a response, and Bloomberg's reporting is correct, then he knows that what she's saying is untrue and she's making false allegations and putting his name directly into it. So from his perspective, that absolutely warranted a response. He got mobbed by people mostly because, he was calling her a liar without being able to provide his side of the story.
Plus he's like somehow seen as some like big, overly powerful suit CEO and stuff instead of the fucking one of the most auteur game designers of our time.
Yeah, exactly. And also, let's be fair, there are a lot of people who just plain don't like him to begin with and have an axe to grind and use this as an excuse to take out all their issues with him.
Yeah, definitely.
On him. He got so mobbed by people that he was forced to temporarily deactivate his account.
Yeah. Which then people attacked him when he came back. For coming back, having the audacity to come back. He got probably the worst out of this deal as far as like his treatment, unfair or not.
Here's the thing I will say. Even if what Helena Taylor was saying was the truth, 100%, Hideki Kamiya did not deserve to be harassed. No one deserves to be harassed on social media. Going around harassing people doesn't actually help people, doesn't solve the problems that you're looking to solve.
And this is a universal point. I mean, the same thing could have been said for the cast of the female Ghostbusters reboot, or like, the guy who played Corlys in House of the Dragon, or,
the people who go around harassing other people do not care about whatever issue they're pretending to care about. They just want to harass people and be shits.
Yeah,
okay? The
they're
people
just vile
harassing
people.
Hideki Kamiya do not actually care about how much Helena Taylor was getting paid. They only wanted an excuse to go and harass somebody, and that gave them a convenient excuse to do that while feeling morally superior.
Speaking of excuses, there's one other kind of thing that I really wanted to talk about, and then I'll open it up again to you if there's anything else you wanted to address. But there is one thing that I saw that really annoys me around all of this. But before the story came out, the Jason Schreier story came out, a bunch of people were using this as like a reason why like piracy is good and why it's okay to pirate a game. Like, say, boycott the game by pirating it. First off, that's bullshit. Stupid. You're not boycotting a game if you're just stealing it. Like, that's just opportunistic. That's like, I don't want to pay for this game, and the excuse I'm going to use is the fact that there's a reason to dispute this. You could use that kind of excuse for everything.
Again,
you just like go into a store and steal an iPhone because they're made by children. You could go, it's like, how many games? How is there any industry that doesn't have some bullshit happening in it?
Every time I hear something like that, it's just people wanting to morally justify them being fucking stupid shits.
Yeah, it's just opportunism.
It's opportunism. You want to do something is shitty, but you want to morally justify it or morally justify it to other people. And I've always been advocate of saying, you know what, if you're going to pirate a game, just pirate it and say you did it because you want to do it.
Yeah, be honest.
Be honest about it. I'm not going to call Nintendo. I'm not calling the police. I don't care. I honestly don't give a shit if anybody pirates Bayonetta 3.
Don't just try to morally justify it like you're some kind of a saint for fucking stealing a game,
Yeah, exactly. You're not fucking owning the system. Like, you're not showing power to capitalism or whatever.
Yeah, and also...
you're being selfish. selfish.
If you're going to boycott something out of some kind of like strongly held moral principle, you're not doing anything if you're just going to play the game.
Right.
You know, you're not actually standing on your principles. You're just, the situation got better for you because now you've justified being able to play it for free. You're still fucking playing. You're not losing anything on the experience. When you make a moral stand against something, you take the shit that comes with it. That's part of what it means.
And you know what? Nobody gives a shit what you pirate. Nobody gives a shit about your fake morality.
Yeah.
Like, take your fake fucking morality and shove it up your ass.
Yeah. And this isn't some like pro-corporate anti-piracy message or anything like that. Like Will said, if you're gonna steal, you're gonna steal. But own it.
Yeah.
Own that
you
you fucking stole.
Just say that you did it because you wanted to. Because you wanted to play the game and you didn't want to pay for it. And I'd be like, yeah, that's fine.
Don't shoot me in the chest and say you tried to save my life.
Right, yeah.
You know, it's like bullshit. Yeah. Just fucking be honest. I think that pretty much covers what I want to say on the issue. Is there anything else that you wanted to say before we move on?
I think we covered all the angles that I could think of.
Yeah, at least the ones that are important to us, I guess.
Yeah.
But that is it for our news segment. We normally would have more news, but like I said, we just felt it was important to kind of discuss this, and so we dedicated our news block to that. Now we're going to move on to our next segment, which is On the Horizon. On the Horizon is where we talk about stuff that's coming up in the next week or so. And we're going to start things off with Tuesday, October 25th on Netflix, Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities. This is a anthology kind of artsy horror series. So it's not all stuff made by him. There's other directors and people that were involved in making these short films, but they kind of all fit into that style, I guess, of Guillermo del Toro, that kind of like visually beautiful and weird, kind of creepy stories, you know?
Right, yeah. Which, you know,
on Netflix.
It'll be a good time in Guillermo del Toro. Okay.
Yeah. Speaking of anthologies, Tales of the Jedi comes on Wednesday, October 26th on Disney+. We talked about this before. I don't remember which event. It might have been Comic-Con when they showed this. But this is like, it's largely like Count Dooku, Ahsoka, Qui-Gon Jinn. Like, it's
we know
about those characters largely, and it's kind of an anthology series, but it looks like some of the episodes are kind of directly connected. Like there, at least 3 of them, I think, are like a single story together. But it's still kind of like an anthology series, basically, for Star Wars. Next up, Star Ocean, The Divine Force, is coming on Thursday, October 27th to PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X, and PC. I have not played a Star Ocean game since like the PS2, so don't have too much more to say about that. All Quiet on the Western Front, based on the particularly famous novel about World War I, is coming on Friday, October 28th to Netflix. The Bastard Son and the Devil Himself is coming to Netflix on Friday, October 28th. Big Mouth is also coming on Friday, October 28th to Netflix for its new season, which I'm excited about. I definitely like that series. The Devil's Hour, which is a British horror, I think movie, is coming on Friday, October 28th as well on Amazon Prime. Also on Amazon Prime on October 28th, Run, Sweetheart, Run. And Wendell and Wild, the animated movie that's produced by and starring Jordan Peele, and also Michael Keegan-Key is also doing a voice on it. And like we've mentioned this a few times, but it's like the team basically behind like Nightmare Before Christmas and stuff. That's Friday, October 28th on Netflix. And lastly, our news topic of the day, Bayonetta 3 is coming on Friday, October 28th on Switch.
Yes.
So whether you're boycotting it or not, all you opportunistic pirates, now's your chance to get ready for Bayonetta 3.
Yep.
Okay, that is it for our On the Horizon segment, and that leaves only our final segment, full spoilers. Today we're going to be discussing She-Hulk Attorney at Law Episode 9, Whose Show Is This? And House of the Dragon Episode 9, the penultimate episode of the season, The Green Council. We're going to start things off as always with She-Hulk, and as always, I need to know just a basic summary. What are your thoughts on the finale?
Oh, it was garbage. It sucked. God damn.
It was so comic accurate, though. So if you don't like it, that's not a failing of the series. That just means that it's not what you wanted. Because it's pretty much exactly, except they just traded her going to a comic book office with her going to a writer's room.
Oh, okay.
But otherwise it's like, I saw some people mark on Twitter that this is now easily the most comic accurate thing in the MCU.
Okay. I've never read a She-Hulk comic. But to me, it felt like that whole bit there, well, that was like the episode. That bit. It wasn't just like a bit and then they got on with the episode. It was like that bit and then like everything's resolved and that's the episode. I was like, what? Did it feel like a satisfying resolution of like her emotional arc? Which it seemed like the last episode was definitely setting up going into a resolution of that. And then it just felt like kind of cheap. I was like, what? That's it? That's the episode?
I think the issue is that they ramped up the drama going into the episode. So people were expecting like a big emotional closure or something like that. And that's not what this show was ever meant to be. So
I saw like a great meme on Twitter that said like, She-Hulk finale was a great representation for white women. She asked to speak to the manager and then got everybody arrested.
I think it's comic accurate. I think it fits to what it is. I think people were misled by what they thought the show was going to be rather than what it always was. And I think people were like, oh, now the show's moving towards something that I like, and this is what I want it to be, so now let's continue with that. And then when it turns back on that and disacknowledges that because that's never what it was, people have a disdain for it because it came closer to what they wanted and then didn't give that then. But that's not what it was ever meant to be, you know, in my opinion, at least. Based on what the She-Hulk comics were like, it was never meant to be like that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so ends the most divisive,
to be honest,
show I think that we've covered week to week.
It would have been better if Kevin Feige actually showed up and talked to She-Hulk instead of the Kevin Feige robot.
But the robot had a hat.
Yeah, the robot had a hat. But I felt like they really whiffed that one. They really
Did you like her calling for the X-Men and then giving like a little thumbs up to the screen?
Yeah. Or like the subtle hint that she's not getting a movie.
Yeah. Here he's like, that's not going to make it on the big screen or something. And she's like, wait, really? And he's like, no.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty good. There's something that I had mentioned previously that ended up coming to fruition, which is that we know now why the Hulk left planet Earth.
Yeah, he went to pick up his son. He was like, I gotta pick up my son from hockey practice.
Yeah.
Back.
That's from the comics.
I know.
That would be
World War Hulk.
Yeah, World War Hulk. They're setting that up. And you can give it's probably since Ragnarok plus the time skip if he wasn't.
I don't know how they're saying.
That'd be 8 years or something.
I don't know how they're saying it World War Hulk, because World War Hulk was that storyline was they sent Hulk to Sakaar, and then after a long time on Sakaar, the Hulk manages to come back to Earth angrier than ever and goes on a freaking rampage.
Yeah, but they changed those. Look at Civil War was changed drastically.
Yes, it was. That needed to be changed drastically. By the
way.
Yeah, but yeah.
Well, I mean, I think, they'll do the same thing. They'll touch on some of the same issues, but change everything else pretty much.
Right, yeah.
But that was set up. We got Daredevil back.
Daredevil, yeah. That was nice seeing Charlie Cox again.
Yeah, him dealing with the family was pretty funny.
Yeah, that was pretty funny, actually.
He's just kind of uncomfortably smiling.
Yeah.
Like, ha, 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 ha.
Well, Jen's mom is Jen's mom and dad are you should get with this nice young man.
It's also, you don't make any money. Well, it's expensive to raise children in California.
Yeah.
So I thought all that was pretty funny. I like that they teased it, but they didn't go back on Emil Blonsky's change.
Right.
So they teased it, making it look like possibly he was part of this group or something, but it turned out he was just taking a paid speaking engagement.
Right, yeah.
So I liked that they didn't go back on it, because the second they kind of hinted that, oh, he's at this thing, I'm like, oh, please don't, go back on everything that they've done with his character now and say it was all bullshit this whole time.
Right.
So I'm glad they didn't do that.
Yeah.
And we got to see Wongers
we got to see Wong.
Wongers.
Yeah, Wongers. Yeah, he came to pick up the Abomination. Abomination now has a room at the, it's a place called
Carmitage, is it?
Yeah, Carmitage, yeah. He now has a room in Carmitage thanks to Wong.
Yeah. They should have had Madison there too.
the Wong Abomination friendship is going to be one of the greatest friendships in the MCU.
Yeah. Now what we need is, I said it before, that we needed like a Beavis and Butthead style reaction video series starring Wong and Madison.
Yes.
And now I think that needs to be Wong, Madison, and Emil Blonsky.
Emil Blonsky, yeah, they could be a trio. They could be a trio.
Sitting on a couch reacting to peak TV.
Yeah.
They're like watching Breaking Bad and Sopranos and shit.
It was funny, it's like seeing Wong getting like really into the Sopranos.
Yeah. I just love he's all like, you got caught up in another show, didn't you? And he's like, we really are in the era of peak TV here.
Yeah.
Thought that was funny. Todd ended up becoming the bad guy. I think there's a nice subtle dig there too, in the sense that basically like the trolls that hated She-Hulk specifically because of the feminism aspects of it, the ones that were going off in an unruly way on Twitter about it and stuff, like basically they're like, who's the villain? Who's the villain? At the end of the show, it's you. I actually thought that was kind of funny. He ended up being the big bad. I like that they didn't have him actually Hulk out, that they played into that and then didn't do it because...
Well, Jennifer said it was stupid. And
yeah.
She complained to the manager about how stupid it was, so yeah.
But it was stupid. It would have been really stupid.
Yeah, it would have been, yeah.
I actually like the way everything, before that wall break moment where she was like, what the hell is all this crap? The way things just started happening one after another, like in absolute ridiculous fashion.
Todd hulks out, then Titania shows up, then Abomination goes crazy, then Bruce shows up. It's like,
he's like, get your hands off my cousin.
Yeah.
It was just like, it was so stupid, and it kept getting progressively dumber, and then you just see her kind of reacting to it like, wait, really? What the hell? And it ties into the title of the episode itself, which is, whose show is this? So actually, I really dug that was like the turning point for the fourth wall break, was like just how it got ridiculous. I always like stuff like that, where like things start happening and you're like, oh, this feels kind of dumb, and then it just keeps ratcheting up until it's like so ridiculous, and then it breaks. And it's like, oh, okay, yeah, this is all bullshit. I like when shows do that, you know? I mean, I liked it we'd mentioned Sopranos because of the whole peak TV thing, and I've mentioned before that one of my favorite things I've ever seen in a TV show is where a character died in that show, and they had played it up like she was having this delusion of how things were going to go right, and they just kept getting more and more like unrealistic how she was going to get out of a situation, and then it ended with her like kind of cutting back to her like in a car on her way to be killed. And it was kind of like, you get caught up in the moment of like, oh, she's going to get away and stuff. And things are happening so quickly that how ridiculous it is, the way she's going to get away with it, how stupid it is, how it just doesn't work in a narrative way, isn't really hitting you yet because it's happening so fast. And you're just kind of a little bit confused, like, wait, what? Why is this cutting so quickly? Why is this is a little too much. And then you realize, oh, this isn't real. So I like those kind of turns in shows. You know, this was like a meta version of that, but I like those kind of turns in shows. But I think that you want to move on.
Yeah, I pretty much do. I've said everything I had to say about this.
So we're going to move on from She-Hulk, the most divisive week-to-week show I think we've ever done. We've covered other shows that you really didn't like, or that, you know, I liked and you didn't like, or vice versa or something, but usually it's been something where we discussed it within like 1 week, you know, like one episode or something. But
we did this.
I can sense your palpable relief that this is over now.
It's finally over. No, I mean,
like hugging somebody and crying. It's over. It's over.
It's fine.
But we're going to move on now to House of the Dragon, Episode 9, The Green Council, focused entirely on Team Green here, basically.
Wow.
We don't get to see the other
shocking
other
considering the title of the episode.
Yeah. But I mean, it's like, people were always like, oh, like, how are we going to see the breakdown of negotiations? Like, well, we didn't. What we saw was like one side hold everything secret and just do everything under the table, you know?
Here's the thing. The entire episode was basically framed as like a thriller about the Hightowers and their allies realizing that the king is dead, knowing this before anybody else, and trying to lock things down and secure, you know, their claim to the throne before the other side even has a chance to know what's going on.
It was almost like a opposite perspective heist film.
Yeah.
Where you're getting the perspective of the people that are trying to like lock down things, rather than the people that are stealing.
Right, yeah, exactly. In this case, though, they're also the ones who are stealing.
Yeah. They're politically stealing a position.
Yeah, they're politically stealing a position. But yeah.
I love how Allison's claim is just so fucking ridiculous that nobody believes it, but they're just going along with it because it's politically advantageous to them.
Right. It's the stupidest thing. Like she's saying, I was talking to my husband on his deathbed and he said he changed his mind and my son is really the king. It's like,
it's funny because she's the only one that believes it.
Yeah, she's even called out on it. The small council is like, okay, so this thing that only you've heard that like, no, we can't independently verify. We're just supposed to go along with that.
Yeah, like, even her son, the king that she's trying to steal the position from, is like laughing as she's telling the story.
Yeah. It's like bonkers. And the thing I feel bad for Allison because she doesn't even seem to like realize how silly she sounds. It doesn't occur to her. It's like...
Do me a favor. Look on the show notes to where Allison is and read her phonetic pronunciation that I put in quotation marks there.
Okay, why? I think I'm saying it correctly. Karen.
I added to let people in. I mean, you could have gotten it from last week's podcast, but we were having so much trouble with the pronunciations of characters' names in the last episode. I said I was going to go through and put in a lot of the pronunciations to make it easier for us.
I'm sorry, the fact that she believes this herself so fervently makes her look stupid, considering she was talking to a man who was doped out of his mind on opium, which is basically what milk of the poppy is. It's opium. He was doped out of his mind on opium and in the middle of freaking dying, just muttering ramblings, and she takes this as gospel.
Well, it's kind of like her character to either be stupid or just to take things on face value intentionally, like being trained to take things at face value so that she can be controlled.
Right.
Like it's like, I don't know how much of it is her being unintelligent and how much of it is her just not questioning something like that.
Right.
Because her father's controlled her whole life and basically made her do anything he wanted. And she just kind of has this very absolutist position. And I wonder how much of that is her being unintelligent and how much of that is her just literally that's how she was trained to think, to just kind of like take things at face value. Because her father doesn't take things that way. And through this episode, she starts to kind of come to the realization that people that she thinks are on her side are not necessarily on her side.
Well, Otto, like for his part, his position has always been that Aegon is king and that he was going to do what he needs to do to ensure that happens. That hasn't changed.
He made that impassioned speech to her about how if she didn't do this, that her and her children would all be murdered, like several episodes ago. Like before the cast change.
He just takes advantage of the fact that Allison now seems to be fully in agreement with him as to who the heir should be.
Yeah. And so everything kind of comes out. So like Allison wasn't plotting behind the scenes, but her father was the whole time. And then the second Allison's like, oh, this is something we need to bring up. And they're like, oh, okay, so plan A it is. And she's like, wait, what?
Yeah, that's another thing that like shows like kind of how gullible her character is, because like she's surprised that everybody was plotting and I'm just like, do you not know these people? Do you not
didn't realize you were part of their plots this whole time?
Not know your father? Did you not realize that your father was manipulating you this whole time? Because before, like, I assumed that she knew, or at least had her suspicions that her father was having her do things like hang out with Viserys so much because for political reasons. I assumed that she knew her father was a schemer, and she didn't appear to know in this episode.
She knew to some extent, but I don't think she realized how much. They also played at some kind of like unspoken things. There was a kind of comment that seemed to imply, very loosely imply, that maybe there was some kind of an early attraction between Rhaenyra and Alicent that the father recognized, that he mentioned her reluctance to kill her on being like, oh, is this about being close to the princess or something? And the way he said it seemed to imply something more than them just being friends kind of thing.
No, there wasn't any of that.
I don't know. I kind of disagree. Like there was a kind of weird way it was implied. I don't think that they had a full-on relationship relationship besides that. I think Alicent had an attraction to her.
I don't
Because I think
so.
it's very clear that Alicent wasn't attracted to King Viserys at all.
Oh, obviously.
That she
he's
was
a lot
just
older
kind of
than
took
she
on that
was.
role. When all the stuff started coming out where they were trying to paint Rhaenyra as a slut, she got so offended, and like Alicent did, at the possibility that Rhaenyra was doing that. And it's like when you add all that stuff together, I think there might be something to that.
I don't know, maybe.
But let's talk about some other stuff that went down here. Otto was locking down everything, locking up everyone that could be a threat to this, forcing people to either declare for Aegon or be arrested. And those who tried to kind of get around that issue were executed.
Right.
One that we know of for sure, at least. So it's just getting brutal. Meanwhile, while all this is happening, they can't find Aegon. He's gone missing.
Yeah, he's gone missing, and so 2 search parties are sent out, one by Alicent, one by Otto. And the reason for the dueling search parties is because basically Otto wants to find Aegon first. He wants to convince Aegon that Rhaenyra and Daemon and their kids need to be executed as soon as possible to secure his claim and make him be the one to be like this. Alicent's trying to get to him to convince him not to do that.
Yeah, Alicent's like, don't do that, and in order to convince you, I'm gonna send your brother who wants you dead so he can have your position, and my personal knight who has a deep vendetta against the person I'm trying to save the life of.
Yeah, exactly.
Otto sends these 2 brothers, Eric and Eric Cargyle, I believe their last name is pronounced. They're brothers, they're twins, and they're both knights, and he sends them out to get Aegon. Eric is Aegon's personal guard, and as they're looking for Aegon, he's using the time to point out to Eric, his brother, like how fucked up Aegon is. He's like showing him Aegon's life and saying, look how fucked up he is. Look at this person that they want us to make king. And this is not right. And his brother's like, but we swore an oath. He's just like, it's all about like, but we're supposed to do this. And Eric's like, no, he's literally watching children who had their teeth and nails filed down to points fighting each other, like presumably to death in gladiator pits. And amongst the children are his own bastards.
Right, yeah. So like he's obviously a fan of the fighting pits.
Yeah, he's a horrible, horrible monster who doesn't even want to rule.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's like pointing this out. Eric's not getting it. Eric ends up abandoning his brother Eric when Eric is fighting Kristen Cole.
Yeah.
And he leaves, and we later end up seeing him coming to the aid of Rhaenys,
who was Corlys's wife, and I believe Viserys' cousin.
Yes. So he comes to her aid to get her out of the castle, and she kind of becomes like the big feature of the episode, but I think we should probably save that for last and make sure we get everything else out of the way first before we get to what she does, because that's kind of the highlight of the episode. We see Mysaria again.
Yeah. So
Daemon's old lover, also known as the White Worm, running a whisper network similar to what was done by Varys in Game of Thrones.
Yes. Yeah, very, very much. She has information. She's the one like hiding Aegon.
Mm-hmm.
She's
hiding Aegon as leverage.
As leverage, yeah. So she's holding a meeting with Otto about the whereabouts of Aegon, and she makes the demand of Otto that she wants the fighting pits to be shut down.
Mm-hmm.
He agrees to do that on behalf, and then she gives him.
Well, he agrees to look into it.
He agrees to look into it, yeah. But she gives it a message. There's no power except the power the people allow you to have.
Mm-hmm. Which is something I wish we'd see more of in Game of Thrones. Or like in House of Dragon or Game of Thrones. I think in Game of Thrones it was done very poorly. Like when the people started revolting, it really didn't make that much sense. Like it wasn't. And then they quickly fell back in a way that just didn't make sense. Like I wish they had found a more clever way to do that, but it would be interesting to see if they're able to do that in this series. But she wants this fighting bit closed down. She gives that lesson to Otto. The brothers get sent to pick up Aegon. They find Aegon, but like we mentioned, Kristen Cole and Aemond are waiting outside.
The new odd couple for Westeros.
Yeah. We're gonna have a sitcom.
Let's talk about like Aemond and Aegon's relationship, because it's really interesting. because Aegon doesn't want to be king. He doesn't believe he's worthy of the role, and he doesn't want the responsibility. He just wants to just be in a little shit for the rest of his life, I guess.
He just wants to be a rich lord with a lot of money.
Yeah, exactly. Aemon, though, he genuinely wants to be king.
And he's put in the work.
Unlike his brother, he's confident. He feels like he's up to the task of ruling a kingdom.
He's read the history. He's read the philosophy. He's done the Knights training.
Yeah.
He's got the biggest dragon in the world. He feels like he's earned it. He's teamed up in this episode with Kristen Cole, who, when Aemon expresses his frustration about that, is like, I too understand what it's like to have other people just be given things that you struggle so hard for. And then he's like, and I also know what it's like to become a total bitch.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're going around trying to get Aegon. They're the ones who end up retrieving him for Alicent.
Yeah.
Alicent has a communication with, they're trying to gather all the subjects in the kingdom into one place, quite violently, like forcing them down street alleys to be into one location so that they can handle the coronation of Aegon and have it seen by everybody in the city.
And then one night, was it Eric?
The one that's helping
Rhaenys?
Yes, that's Eric.
And basically trying to help her escape the city. She ends up getting herded with the rest of the city to Aegon's coronation.
Which is at the Dragon Pit, ironically.
Yeah, which is at the Dragon Pit, yeah. Which is a funny thing because, like, he's reluctant up until he gets the crown and the sword. Then, like, he's into it.
Yeah, they had a whole scene, like, all this pomp and circumstance of, like, the knights. They had, like, some really cool shots with the swords going down behind him as he was walking by and stuff. And so he's doing all this pomp and circumstance to be showing off as the new king. And then the crowd cheers for him because, like, there's this whole moment where they announce that the king's dead. But by the way, with his last breath, a total bullshit line that nobody believed.
Yeah.
And then the crowd just eats it up because, of course, they're all like misogynistic trash. All the peasants in the town are all like misogynists. So they're all like, yeah, king instead of queen. That sounds great. I'm all for that. If you remember, they had the one episode where the princess and Daemon had gone secretly out into the streets at night and watched like plays being performed that were basically mocking her.
Yeah.
The whole time. So, there's like a sentiment kind of against her amongst the people because she's a woman.
Game of Thrones, you see a lot of the so-called small folk, despise the royalty, despise the lordships.
But like, seemingly herded into the wrong direction, like hating on Tyrion instead of hating on Joffrey or something, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That seems to be like a typical thing. It just kind of, I guess, shows how easy it is to control the lower class. So that's being done. They herd everybody into the dragon pit. Rhaenys is like, oh, okay. She wanted to go there in the first place to get her dragon. And Eric, who she was with, was like, no, we can't get the dragon. They'll be expecting you to go for your dragon. We need to get out of here. They huddle the crowd all into the dragon pit. So she's like, oh, cool.
Yeah.
She slips off and goes downstairs. Now we should note that for the last couple of episodes, Miss Dragon Dreams, Helena Targaryen, Aegon's wife and sister, has been saying one specific line over and over again. And that's that there's a beast under the floorboards.
Oh, yeah.
Beware the beast under the floorboards. There's a beast under the floorboards. She's said that like 3 times in like the last couple of episodes. Well, now we got to find out what that means. Because as Aegon has been crowned king and has finally started to fall in love with the role as all the crowd is cheering for him, you hear like an explosion and see an explosion from the back of the crowd as a dragon has like emerged from the dragon pit dungeons beneath into the main room.
Yeah, it's Rhaenys, that's her dragon. She flexes her power in front of everybody before flying off to warn Rhaenyra and let Rhaenyra and Daemon know what's going on.
I kind of wanted, like, when she had the dragon, like, roar right at the whole family, basically, but not shoot fire. I kind of wanted one of them to go, oh, like, that stinks.
Yeah.
That could not have smelt pleasant. But yeah, so she brings this dragon face to face with this entire faction, an entire green faction of the royal family. She could have murdered every single one in one go, basically.
Yeah, but then we wouldn't have a show.
Yeah. There's a lot of people that really hated on that decision. And I'm like, besides the fact that we wouldn't have a show if that happened, it's also that's like half of the, like, all those people up there are her family.
Well, yeah, because you're asking, like, logical questions like that. And it's like, it does kind of having her show up with the dragon does create that plot hole. Like, why didn't she just solve the conflict right there?
Well, even besides the idea, like I said, even besides the fact that it would, like, ruin the show if that just ended it there, you have to understand a few things. That's her family.
Yeah.
Like, that's literally her family, presumably with the children. We didn't really see them, but I think Aegon and Helena's children are there too. This is her family. And even though she's on the black side of the war, it's not like she's, like, overwhelmingly loyal to that side.
Right.
Like, she kind of doesn't really care too terribly much which side, you know? She just kind of has hedged her bets more towards one way than another. But she hasn't really, like, you know, it's not like she's completely committed to either side. Like, she's not that set in her ways on that. And everybody that you're saying, if she had just killed them, she would have ended the war. It's like, yeah, that's her whole family, or half her family. Why would she want to kill half her family? Like, it's like, could you kill half your family, even if it's the logical thing to do? It's like, that's not an easy choice, you know? So I think that there's more to it to be said. I think if you're gonna make an argument against that scene, the argument is the fact that it happened at all. That they had the dragon arise from the pit. People are like, well, she didn't care about the peasants. It's like, well, yeah, there's where you can make an argument, you know? My answer to that would be that, you know, she's royalty, and based on our equivalent royalty of the medieval ages, which isn't, you know, to say back then, because obviously we never had dragons and never lived in Westeros. But just the idea of, like, the parallel would be to like our medieval European society is what this is a parallel to. Royalty didn't give a shit about peasants. They didn't even see them as humans.
Right, yeah, exactly.
So it's like, of course she just burst out of there, wouldn't give a shit. No. And then could still be reluctant to kill her family, you know, because that's royalty.
Rhaenys, like, maybe like a protagonist for a show, but she's still royalty. She still, like, sees peasants as nothing.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, to her, even royalty on the other side of a conflict is still far more valuable than random peasants.
Right, yeah, exactly.
So
this isn't a story about bad people, then the ultimate moral, you know, paragons of justice.
Yeah, no, not at all. This is all about the gray, you know?
Yeah.
So that's pretty much how that ends. I know there's been a lot of hate about that one scene in particular based on, like, the kind of logic of, you know, like, oh, she made a bad choice. People are saying that's bad writing, and I'm like, when is a bad choice bad writing, you know? I don't get that.
Yeah. People do make bad choices in real life, so it's like, yeah.
I mean, that's where your drama comes from and stuff, and it's like, there's things you could argue that the scene was a bit too over the top and everything. It's like, you could argue that, sure, you know, but that's not what I see people arguing. What are your thoughts on that final scene?
I mean, it was fine. Felt like it was a bit over the top, and I saw, like, their justification for it. Like, they wanted to have, like, this big moment because it was the penultimate episode, but just seemed like kind of silly that Rhaenys would not just take her dragon and immediately flee, that she would stop to, like, make this big show to everybody and then run off.
Mm-hmm. It's like, it's one of those things. It's like, it's a cool moment, but it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
It's like, I always use that argument, like, in the final battle in the Harry Potter movies, there's like a battle between Harry and Voldemort, and it's done like there's this huge, like, big fight, and they're flying around, and all this shit's happening and stuff. In the books, it's literally like, Harry, like, outwits Voldemort. Like, they're just talking to each other and circling each other, holding their wands out, and Harry kind of, like, outwits him. And that's it. That's the fight. It's just them walking around in a circle talking with their wands pointed at each other. And then in the movies, they make it like this big battle, and it's like, yeah, it's a cool spectacle and everything, but it's like meaningless. Like, it's just, nothing's resolved. Like, it doesn't make sense. You could argue, like, oh, this kind of felt cheap and everything like that. It's like, yeah, a lot of it does feel cheap because it didn't have the emotional weight of the Battle of Wits that was in the books, you know, versus how it was done in the movie. So to me, it falls in line with something like that, where it's like, because this is film, they wanted to have this big epic moment, and it probably would have been better if they just didn't. And they went, you know, with just her escaping. So that's pretty much it. Anything else to mention about this episode?
What about Larry's foot fetish?
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Part of me wonders how much of that is him just being a sick creep with a foot fetish, and how much it is that his actual kink is like that he's controlling her, that he's like forcing her to do something she doesn't want to do.
I think it's just him being a foot fetish enthusiast and arson enthusiast. So we do
Larry
see,
Tarantino.
and we do see the fighting pits get set on fire mysteriously.
Well, we saw something get set on fire. Some people have said that they think that that's the fighting pits that Otto said he was going to look into. And some people think that that was the base of the white worm that Larry said he was going to take out for the queen.
Right, yeah, who knows.
So,
anyway.
And burning people alive in a building is kind of Larry's.
Yes, it is. That was him. Like I said, arson and foot fetish enthusiast, Larry Strong.
He's like on some panel show and like that's his credits beneath his name.
Yeah, exactly.
It's all arsonist and foot fetishist.
Yeah.
He's all, excuse me, I'm a lord of a house. And they're like, no, nobody cares about that. You're an arsonist and a foot fetishist. One other thing we could say is that, again, fucking Kristen Cole got away with straight up murdering a lord without being ordered to, or without any, he just straight slams a lord's head into the small council table and murders him on the spot.
Oh, yeah. Because he's a piece of shit.
How can a fucking no-name person from a house with no notability get away with the amount of shit that this guy's gotten away with?
Because Allison, against, all logic and reason, keeps protecting him.
She's like, and now he'll be head of the King's Guard. It's like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it's like,
the people that you're, elevating around you, Larry's and... you think you're all, in this, morally superior position, and you're just
that's what I love about her. It's
horrible people.
She's appalled that people are scheming, and then she surrounds herself with schemers.
The worst schemers.
On purpose. Yeah. It's
Oh, God. You got Larry's who's just a straight-up kin killer,
Right, yeah.
And Kristen Cole, who just can't keep his temper in check and is just murdering lords left and right.
Yeah, I can't get over, being rejected by a woman 20 years ago. Yeah. It's goddamn.
Yeah, king of the incels.
Yeah, king of the incels, yeah. But that covers everything, I think.
Yeah, pretty much. That covers everything. So next week, we are going to talk about the series finale of House of the Dragon. Or the season finale of House of the Dragon.
Yeah.
We are not going to be talking about She-Hulk because that episode we discussed today was the series or season finale. We don't know of that. So we won't be discussing that next week. It'll just be House of Dragons, which is good because that's the longest part of our conversation. It gives us the time to really kind of reflect on things and kind of give our final impressions of the series as a whole in addition to the episode. So that's good that we're going to have some more time to express that in next week's podcast. Of course, we'll also cover whatever seems to happen in the news and what's coming up on the horizon. But until then, you can reach us on Twitter. I am at Tyson Gifford. Will is at Voxel Hero. You can reach us on our website, thetotalscreen.com. If you go to any of our container stories for this podcast, for the OnScreen podcast, on thetotalscreen.com, you should find all the kind of links that we have, all of our social links, our official Twitter as well as our personal Twitters, as well as our Facebook and our SoundCloud and all that stuff will all be within those container stores. So check that out if you need more information. But you can also just subscribe to us through your podcast client of choice, like Apple Podcasts or Podcast. Thank you everybody for listening. Good night.
Night.
Thank you for listening to the On-Screen Podcast, the official podcast of The Total Screen. Visit our website at thetotalscreen.com. This podcast can be found on any major podcast client, including Pocket Cast and Apple Podcast. The entire backlog of this podcast and other content can be found on our YouTube channel.